industry experience and holds several designations, including CPCU, CLU, and LOMA. Ed served as CIECA's chairman of the Board of Trustees in 2008 and is a member of multiple advisory and industry boards. In 1997, he facilitated the creation of State Farm's LAST program, and in 2012 led the team that created and implemented the company's Emergency Road Service and Towing program. Ed is currently working on strategic company projects and is responsible for large vendor accounts. I want to thank all of you for spending your time today and thank our presenter for sharing his insight and expertise with all of us. As always, the session will be recorded and will be available on the CIECA website within 24 hours. I will now turn this over to our presenter, Ed Weidmann of State Farm Insurance.
Hello, as Fred indicated, I'm Ed Weidmann, Chairman of the Board of CIECA. Today I'd like to provide you with a business perspective on why the estimatics industry should use CIECA's BMS standard versus the EMS. In addition to being CIECA's chair, I also work at a large insurance company. I have created many programs requiring business-to-business communication, and I'm familiar with the challenges associated with creating new programs. By creating new programs, I always try to use the most current technology, but sometimes I'm forced to create proprietary code to communicate with business partners. Let's discuss why CIECA's BMS code is better. Proprietary code is usually written for one application and is difficult to update. CIECA Standards creates one solution regardless of estimatic vendor. It eliminates costs associated with creating proprietary code and minimizes the need for multiple translators. Time to market is decreased both in the initial development of a program and when future enhancements are needed. As a matter of fact, studies have shown when CIECA standards are used for the initial implementation, the speed and cost of future implementations are decreased 30 to 40%. But how is this possible? Well, the BMS encourages the reuse of its core data segments. In the BMS, once a data segment is defined, it is then used by all services and messages. Once a vehicle is described in a message, for example, an estimate assignment, the same code can be leveraged when coding subsequent messages, for example, the estimate. The same holds true when describing a vehicle for a glass message, a rental message, or a repair message. Once communication channels are established, they are used by all subsequent messages. But sometimes, CIECA standards are not available when you need them. So you write proprietary code to fill your needs. But why does this happen? CIECA creates standards when their members indicate they have a need for a standard. The standards are created by volunteers from member companies. Resources must be allocated based on need. So standards are not usually created until an actual need exists. If a company identifies a need that was not previously anticipated, CIECA standards may not be available for the communication needs required for the program. Most companies cannot wait until a CIECA standard is created, so they write proprietary code. Once proprietary code is created and integrated into an application, resources are not usually allocated to rewrite the code to CIECA standards when it becomes available. System resources can usually be used more productively for new projects. Recoding to the CIECA standard only occurs when the proprietary code needs to be changed or when the CIECA standard provides benefits functions, how it is structured, and the number of elements that exist. They want to use the newest standard, the best technology, and the most current format. The BMS is now 20 years old, and the standard has been in non-maintenance mode since 2002. That's before we had tablets or even iPhones, which were introduced in 2007, before the world of mobile computing, and before cloud technology was a known term. Technical people want data to be defined one way for all messages, to have a consistent structure for all business partners. They want to use a standard that simplifies feature enhancements and minimizes the cost associated with implementations. But what happens when new technology enters the market? CIECA standards can play an integral part in creating new technology. Several companies have used the BMS structure to create web service applications. But what about mobile computing? CIECA is currently evaluating how the BMS can be used for mobile computing. A committee has been created to determine how BMS can be used by creating JSON messages. JSON is the language of mobile computing in the communication world. People working on the business side are more interested in the impact the standard or code will have on customers and the company. What efficiencies will be gained if the standard is used, and the costs associated and or saved by using a particular standard. The problem of programming hours is always a concern. Projects compete against each other to get programming hours, and most times there are a limited amount of hours available. This forces projects to be pushed back and other options to be considered to minimize necessary programming. Many decisions are made on which project results in the largest return on investment. Above all, the most important issue the business area has to consider is security and privacy. Customer data must be protected, and laws and regulations must be followed. Businesses need to look at the positive aspect of using one coding method over another. When you compare BMS to EMS, you quickly realize that BMS has significantly more data elements and code lists, 7 times as much. This allows greater analytics, providing the ability for a company to look at many more aspects of a transaction. BMS also segments information into services, which allows companies to separate their analytics easier. There is no reason to use old technology. BMS uses current technology, minimizing the need and cost associated with upgrades. This slide illustrates the significant difference in the amount of data contained in a BMS schema compared to EMS. The same is true for the code tables. BMS contains over 7 times for companies to spend time and money to perform the mapping. It will also standardize how the mapping should be completed, speeding up development time and reducing development costs. When you take everything into consideration, there's only one solution that meets the needs of both the technical and business areas, and that's BMS. It contains the structure, elements, codes, and architecture needed today and into the future. But how is the BMS used today? Most people in our industry look at the export capabilities of the products produced by the estimatic information providers and believe EMS is the primary code used for communication. This isn't the case. Most companies use CIECA BMS every single day, but many consumers are not aware of its use. That's because it's used for the back-end transmission of data between companies. This occurs every day between the insurance companies, rental car companies, salvage companies, glass companies, tow companies, and parts distribution companies for both OEM and recycled parts. It also occurs between other companies without their competitors' knowledge. But why stop there? BMS should be used by everyone. There's no reason to use other, less effective methods of communication. If we ask the question, who can make the biggest impact on BMS implementations, the answer would be companies with applications that are used by multiple industry segments. Communication links established by those applications need to be created or converted into BMS. Some examples are the estimatic information providers, major rail car companies, large salvage vendors, large glass companies, large parts distribution companies, large recycled parts companies, large repair status reporting companies, and large CSI companies. But BMS is not a solution in itself. The BMS, or Business Management Suite, separates messages into 15 services. It provides a structure and data elements necessary to improve the process, but it must be integrated into the applications that use the attributes of BMS to the full potential. Applications must be written to separate the services in the BMS. Then, controls need to be built to control access to each service. The owners of the data have to be able to identify who can access each service and the data contained in it. Only then will we get the full benefits of the BMS. This slide gives a representation of the amount of data sent in a BMS and EMS transmission. The BMS transmits only the information necessary to perform the duties requested by the sender of the information. The EMS, on the other hand, provides all the data, which opens up the possibility of misuse of the unneeded information. Why won't the big impact companies change their EMS export to BMS? Well, the primary answer is cost and potential loss of business. The first company to create a BMS export will need to create the programming from scratch and test it in the market. They may also need to support BMS and EMS export capabilities until their business partners build the ability to receive BMS. If both options are not available, companies without BMS capabilities may switch to a when their business partner converts. It will also allow them to upgrade their application to the most current communication code. This is already being done by many companies in the industry, probably without your knowledge.